Let's begin. Welcome everyone to the leadership team meeting this evening. Will you please start with 72 seconds silence for those who lost their lives? Good. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Emma Will. Are there any others? Declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? Minutes of previous meeting. When I sign this as a three. Sign them. And then can I suggest that we have two papers related to Grenfell and one with a private confidential appendix, which is number 9, which is the settlement of the emergency responder claims. And I suggest we go next door, consider that, then come back into the public session, then we can continue having the whole meeting in public. So first, we should just go next door so we consider the confidential. Agreed. Would you like to come over? Sorry.
when I've got like these people. And the friends.
We actually.
I think people
What they do when they check. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's not elections. Exemption. It's easy. That's. I'm not trying.
Okay. Right, so we said anyway.
Yes, if that. Okay.
They want to try. They just. Oh, you too. It's the family. That's it.
Thank you very much. So we're going to take agenda item 9 first. Just to say we have considered the exempt appendix, which is the supplement of the emergency responders claims. And so now we are back in the public section. And it's just saying that there are 140 firefighters, which is the largest group of emergency responders who are bringing this claim. And this report sets out a proposal for us to enter into a negotiated agreement to resolve the civil claims. The negotiated agreement includes 4 other defendants named in the civil proceedings, and we've gone about it through the alternative dispute resolution process. And I'd just like to say that the council really does appreciate the sensitivities within the community regarding the role of the fire service and firefighters. And as part of the alternative dispute resolution process, we worked really hard with the other defendants to ensure that all the valid claims were resolved and compensated in a way that actually mitigates a financial impact on, our resources. We need to take this decision to proceed with this urgently. Because what we want to do is ensure that settlement agreement can be finalised within the next 3 weeks. And we are in private session because we do need to keep the terms confidential as it's not yet been finalised. Okay, we've discussed it. Yes.
So just one point, Elizabeth, in 5.3, it talks about that the overall sum is likely to be a lot less doing a settlement than going to court. I just really wanted to report that one of the overriding things from discussions with BSLs is also distress. The distress is of going to court. It's not just about the money, it's also about the process.
Yeah, and I'd also like to take the opportunity to point out just because we use the legal term defendants in this. I just want to make sure that everyone realises they're actually crystal clear that the council is not and would not defend decisions made and actions taken up for that tragedy. So it's a legal term in this paper. It's not defending. Okay, Mary, do you have any comments? Sally?
Well, I appreciate that the terms of the settlement are confidential. I presume that the firefighters also, they are named as individuals to group action, and that there should be a claim in the public domain within the High Court. So can we know what they claimed? So that's separate from that's the particular other case. That's separate from the settlement itself, because the court.
Yes, I understand your question. Maxine.
So thanks, Mayor. The alternative dispute resolution does not itemise the claimants. In terms of the court thing that you're referring to, so there has recently been a court hearing in respect of not firefighters but of police, a small number of police officers. That the judge directed them to continue with trying to achieve a settlement out of court. Were those cases to ultimately go to court, then I think at that point, I'm just looking to the vote, at that point, then details of those, then some further details of those claims will become public. But that's not
That's not what we're discussing tonight. Tonight we're discussing it.
Yeah, but we need that.
Okay, are there any other things? So can we agree the recommendations for paragraph 2 that we are entering into a global settlement agreement as described in the exempt appendix that we discussed, and that's going to provide a full and final settlement of those claims in the current alternative dispute resolution process, and that we're going to approve the council entering into an apportionment agreement as set out, as we discussed in the exempt appendix, and that we'll delegate authority to the chief exec, who's going to you'll have the authority in consultation with me, and following advice from the monitoring officer and the exec director of resources to agree and sign off the detailed terms of the settlement agreement and the apportionment agreement between the defendants in the process. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now could we go back right finally. Yes. No, 4, which again is a Grenfell paper. It's a Grenfell Assistant Home Ownership Scheme that we have been very much aware of. When I was years, we've been working with the government to come up with the Grenfell Assistant Home Ownership Scheme. So I'm delighted to see that the paper has come to fruition and is here. So,
thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, it has been a long time in coming because it's been actually quite a lot of detail that has been worked on. And after the Grenfell tragedy, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, made a real commitment regarding the right to buy for those who lost their homes. And we as council have been working very closely with survivors and the government has come up with this scheme to make sure that any additional financial costs beyond what the ordinary right to buy situation will be met. And I don't know if Dan wants to come in here and talk about this.
I'm very happy to, I mean, it's a government-led scheme. This is really,
It's
this is really about us
really
playing our part
approval
in
that will come
facilitating
in
the
there
government.
and facilitate it, exactly. So given this is a government-led scheme, we have questions. I think this code is very well written because it's very detailed. It seems quite a simple thing, but actually the devil is in the detail.
Yeah, no, just to welcome the paper. As sort of said, it's been a long time in the coming. It's obviously very important for us to reach the lines is concerned. So two questions. First of all, we just confirm the government payment is a lump sum. It's not going to be done over a duration of the equity.
Correct, it comes as a kind of one upfront capital.
And you've given an estimate of the number of houses that will be, number of homes that will, number of BSRs will be entitled to this scheme. Is there an overall quantum in terms of the likely value?
No, I mean, we're really hesitant to try and put any number on because depending on which option people choose, there will be capital receipts of one kind or another.
Yes.
So, but it obviously that depends so much on how many people follow through on choice to buy, and depends on which version of the scheme they decide to adopt, whether they come with the council or go with
Yeah,
the
no, that's fair comment.
you can kind of model it based on some assumptions on those numbers, but we've got no real basis on which to make those assumptions. So we're deliberately avoiding trying to make a prediction about the receipt.
Thank you.
It's really great,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's a real step forward.
Actually, the commitment given by the Prime Minister is going to be helpful, actually, and that people will have the right to buy. So thank you very much. Could we please agree the recommendations in paragraph 2 there?
Agreed.
Right, now we are on to agenda item 5. The voluntary sector support fund that we award the grants. Sarah. Welcome, lawyer. Over to you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank SOP who started this process. We've had previous hat on and to the officers for all their work they've done in this. It's been quite a long process. But I just really wanted to highlight that this programme is a discretionary grant which funds core costs to the voluntary sector and is part of the council's overall commitment to funding the sector. I think this year it's up to about 22.4 million, which covers obviously statutory services as well as services. This round of funding was oversubscribed by 300%, and we received 74 applications, which many of the applicants overbid, as it were, for funding. There was a solid eligibility criteria and process against which all the applications were evaluated. And I think it's unfortunate that we're unable to fund all of the organisations that applied, but we have been able to fund some new organisations alongside previously funded groups. The funding is for 3 years to enable organisations to become more resilient. And if you go to table 4 on page 29, you will see the organisations that have been recommended for funding and what services they provide to support our most vulnerable residents, from children to old people. This round of funding has been made more accessible to a wider range of voluntary sector organisations through the introduction of a new smaller grants funding strand, which is being administered by the Kensington and Chelsea Foundation. And I think we all appreciate that the unsuccessful organisations are disappointed to have missed out at this time. And officers will work with them to look at other funding opportunities which will be coming forward next year and assist them with capacity building. And I think, Maura, I don't know whether you want to add anything on quality resource.
Yes, as part of the process, we did carry out a thorough policy impact assessment before and after the recommendations were made. And we found that overall there were negative impacts. There were a number of positive impacts and some neutral impacts. So with regards to positive impacts in terms of age, we are awarding to one organisation that supports older people, 2 organisations that support younger people.
And with regard to disability, we're working with two organisations that support disabled residents. And in terms of people on low incomes and those living in poverty, all 20 organisations work with those cohorts. And with regards to socioeconomic issues and the most deprived areas of the borough, 75% of the funding is going to organisations based in the north of the borough. And Goulburn Ward, which is our most deprived ward, not just in the borough, but in London, is receiving 30% of the funding. So we're very mindful of that. And with regards to sex, race, sexual orientation, pregnancy and maternity, we found a neutral impact on those particular areas because we're not funding for those particular protected characteristics. So overall, we found that the fund is delivering a more positive impact, notwithstanding the fact that there are some organisations that did apply that are not getting the funding this time around. But as Sarah said, we'll be providing capacity building and signposting and support to access of the funding.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's fantastic about you doing the targeting. But there's two. One, the Packpots not in this list. Do they get their funding somewhere else?
Adults.
That's adults, okay. And then the second thing, which is really just a presentational point of view, is that we're obviously putting monetary value here, and there's no recognition that a lot of these build organisations are operating council-owned property, which we pay for and run. And I know that that's something which is part of the way we're now looking at social investment in terms of how you incorporate that. I think we need to say that should really be recorded when it looks at the support that we're giving to organisations.
So we have a very big spreadsheet that shows all the different funding streams for each organisation if they were bidding.
Catherine.
Yeah,
I've got two questions, and sorry, they're not related, but I'll ask them both at once. So on table 3, where you've got the breakdown of the BCS support, where obviously it says children's services 3.4 million, 66 different arrangements, etc. Do you know what percentage of it is statutory and what percentage is voluntary?
We do. I can provide that information separate to this thing.
I think that would be quite helpful for everyone to have, to see, quite how much we are giving away voluntarily from the council to our very valuable voluntary sector. So that was the first question. And the second one was that I know that the people who, some of the people who are disappointed, I'm just wondering if they were aware that if they asked for over 30,000, they therefore wouldn't be eligible for the small blocks of funding that they can get from the Kensington and Chelsea Foundation. Was that made crystal clear to them when they asked for too much and then basically excluded themselves from the other funding?
Yes, it's very clear on the application site that if they want to ask for over a certain amount, then it falls within strands 1 and 2. If they're asking for under 30,000, then it is the smaller grant. So we made it very clear there's a distinction between the two.
And was there any other information about other sources of potential funding that they might be able to apply to?
Not as part of this, but as part of our conversations that we're having with them now, we are signposting them to other sources of funding.
Josh?
Thank you, Moira. Thank you, Sue. So I think, we all support all these organisations that do such a fantastic work in the environment, no matter what they do. There's so many things that they do. But of course, there's only a finite resource we have. And I was wondering, on the application programme, was it clear that when people were bidding that they may not be successful for various reasons? Was there like saying, like, we understand you may want to bid for more, or we understand there is this amount of money available, but given so many people that bid, unfortunately, people that lose out. Was that clear on the application?
It was clear that just because you bid, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get funding. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Just that to balance that out. Yeah. Great.
Any sorry.
Yeah, just would love to know a little bit more about the small fund, because that's something new on this round, and I think that should encourage kind of smaller organisations, CICs, and kind of incubator kind of organisations to be supported. Any feedback yet on how that's going? I understand the results are coming tomorrow.
Yes, the results are coming tomorrow. We do know that it was pretty much the same number that applied for that. Around 37 organisations applied for the small grants. Given that there was much less money allocated to smaller organizations, we expect that the oversubscription of that fund is going to be a lot higher. But yes, once we have the final list, we can share that as well.
And just to echo what Josh said, just because someone didn't get it doesn't undermine what they do. I think it's very, very difficult.
And it doesn't undermine what everyone else does too, because, I mean, this is fantastic. Because we've got a lot of organisations who we've known for a long time, who have successfully bid and got money, and we've got new ones coming in. So it's great, and it's for the next 3 years. So I think that's excellent. It's sort of a foundation, and then a little bit of new blood coming in to perk everyone up a bit. Now, Mary, before I take this lady at the back, anything from OSC? No? Anything from the lady behind Sarah? You wanted to ask?
Hello, I'm Shireen Williams. I'm from Response Community Projects. I applied for the Youth Assistance Fund this round, and unfortunately we weren't approved.
Yeah.
I emailed you. I'm not very well, but I will be leaving quick soon. I just wanted to talk about the hard work that a lot of organisations who weren't approved on that fund have been partaking on behalf of the council and other organisations. We've been holding the community. We've just come out of COVID, very, very difficult circumstances with COVID, and it's very, very difficult getting volunteers, and also just in regards to bringing a community out and supporting the community. Response is an organisation south of the borough, based in Elscourt, which is a very deprived area also, as we know. We deal with asylum seekers, we support asylum seekers, we support people in hotels, we support the destitute, the homeless, etc., and we work very, very hard we've worked very hard to gain the trust of the public. And I'd just like for the council to really consider the organisations that you haven't supported or that you haven't approved this time, and that you keep your word in regards to say you're going to run courses for organisations in terms of their capacity building, in terms of funding, etc. I'm asking that you don't just give us classes, but you actually give us support. You know, I've been asking for technological support for a long time, haven't had it because of the red tape with trying to get you guys trying to approve your vendors or whatever and whatnot.
Yeah.
We're trying to put our organisation into the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, don't signpost us to courses. Do the work with organisations, especially south of the borough, because I think south of the borough is forgotten, I must say, and a lot of the funds that should be available to the south there should have been an even keel. Now, Goulburn Ward, I grew up in Goulburn Ward, born and bred in Ladbroke Grove. The destitution and the statistics, I believe, should have moved from where they are within the amount of time, 40 plus years old. We cannot keep on saying that these are destitute areas and that we're going to put money into organisations. There should have been some change, some social change. You know, I grew up in that area. I cherish it. I saw Grenfell Tower on fire, just to let you know. So that area to me is precious. However, there are still people in the south who are suffering. People who are suffering with their benefits, suffering with the cost of living, suffering with homelessness, and there are lots of organisations down that way who are investing lots of hours that we're not being paid for, you know, and we are experiencing a lot of the burden from a management community, also staff team and stuff, running around giving food parcels to people and doing things above and beyond that we don't have the capacity to do because we care about the community. So the fact that you guys have awarded, say, 90% of funds to larger organisations who might have more kind of speech or have kind of more of an ability on social media and stuff, does not mean that you should forget the organisations who are literally trying to hold people together. And we also, should I say, not prevent, but we comfort people so they don't come running to the council and throwing stones at you guys. We literally, we reduce the heat that people feel about the council and the services that they're not getting. We absorb that and we try to support our organisations locally also through partnerships, but the people of Elscourt and also neighbouring boroughs and people who travel far and wide to come to our community centre as well. So I think don't just signpost us to IT uplift classes or funding, bidding classes and stuff. Work with us so that we can provide more and that we can improve our capacity financially, socially. We don't want to get involved politically, but economically and technologically, most definitely, we do want to have that support from you guys. And I'm sure a lot of organisations, SAP and also the organisations who haven't been approved, will agree with me that Council needs to do more. Thank you.
Can I say thank you? Thank you for coming tonight, because it's cold and it's dark, so really appreciate that. And thank you for the work that you're doing in our schools. And I appreciate that it's very tough when you've bid for something, you've put all that work and you haven't been selected this time. But I do believe there are other funding streams which are going to come on stream next year. And I hear exactly what you say about us saying that we'll give support and we will do capacity building. We do need to do that to ensure that next time, when there are other things to bid for, that you're more successful than you have been this time. So thank you, as I said, for all you do for the residents of our schools. It's very much appreciated, and thank you for coming this evening. Moira, I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on or to try and reassure this.
I do want to comment on that, and I have visited Shireen in the past, and yes, they do a great deal of work, and they're also linking up with other partners in the area. And in terms of our support, yes, definitely, it's not just going to be signposting. We will actually work with you. We will sit down there and spend time with Response to make sure that you are in a better position going forward. So we want to make sure that you're sustainable, because you are a good resource in the Earls Court area. We'll definitely provide the support you need. And also we want to understand from you, rather than saying this is what we can offer, understand from you what it is that we need from us, so we can tailor that support to your needs.
Samir.
I couldn't agree more with Shireen. And if you don't mind me talking about our conversation, talking about someone in the South who's hungry and disabled, someone that the point of you funding the voluntary sector is for you to discharge your statutory duty, for you to have a peace of mind saying, well, our vulnerable residents, well, we can't do it in-house, we've got people doing it. Today on our website, someone in Sunderland, an organisation, contacted me because the residents of Kingston and Chelsea needed food. So my views, the lead member knows, my views are clear on the process. The disappointment for us at the space, our business plan is not based on good way. But for me as a resident, and I've been consistent, you needed to change in different departments within the council. And that culture within the voluntary sector, it's not just in Kingston and Chelsea, it's with different local authorities where system can be a bit more, not transparent, but fairer. And for me, this, as I said, is a least opportunity for the council, for this particular council to actually lead the way into something completely different. My concern is that you can go ahead with that. We're paying £130,000 a year to the volunteer centre for brokerage. So what does it mean? Any lay person looking at that would say to Shireen, don't worry, don't need to recruit volunteers. We pay £130,000 to the volunteer centre to procure those volunteers. And get those volunteers to know. I'm sure they do excellent work. What I don't see in speaker is the value for money, which is essential when you commission services. Where's the value for money? How do you know that they're going to deliver what they need to deliver? Because what I understand, you're going to have conversation with the volunteers and agree with them the outcomes and the outputs. So how do we know that it's social value? How do we know that it's actually effective? Why is that not coming into scrutiny? Because really, as a resident of this borough, you could even pay them £250,000. How do I know that my taxpayer money is going to produce outcomes?
Mm-hmm.
It's
so
not in the
that level. So I think what we're saying is you've got the process, you've gone through it. But how at the end of the day do you choose organisations? How do you know that they will give you value for money? What criteria are you using to weigh it up? Because as previous people have said, it's 300% oversubscribed. We simply cannot afford to. Everyone And Samira is right, we have to think about how we use taxpayers' money wisely. So the question is, are we using it wisely in this case?
We believe so. We went through a very rigorous assessment process based on their application and also our experience of working with those organizations. But in terms of delivery, and if they don't deliver, we have a very strong performance management framework, whereby if they're not delivering the outcomes and the outputs that we agree with them, we will go through a period of supporting them to improve their performance. And if they don't improve their performance, it's very clear that we will withdraw the funding. So it's not, we will not continue to fund organizations that are underperforming.
Thank you.
Also, at the application portal was extremely disagreeable in terms of usability. And I think that's happened to me several times trying to apply for an arts grant. And it also happened to myself and a number of other organisations who are applying for this BCSF fund. I had to do my application about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
The system would not allow me to go back and copy and paste my work because it froze.
Yeah.
And when I tried to upload documents, it wouldn't do that either. So I just think that you need to look at the whole, the situation as a whole, and base decisions on reality and not just, I don't want to use the word, but I just think that there needs to be a kind of more interactive type of process with organisations. Because I've invited councillors to come and visit me, I've invited individuals to come down, etc. And some do, some don't. So, you know, what do you want to take? Queues every Thursday outside our downtown. We had queues outside every Saturday. That's now reduced because obviously RBKC has the highest percentage of food bank requests in London. RBKC has the highest percentage of food bank requests in London. So we're trying to upskill and support individuals so that they placements. I don't normally come here and I don't normally I'll talk in the community or whatever. I don't normally try to see, and I'm finding it's quite difficult. Actually, I'm expressing myself today as well. So please, you know, just so what are we going to do about that? You know, we're working with other organisations I won't mention to actually try and combat the constraints on people's economies that they're feeling personally. So what are we going to do about all of these food banks? We have the highest amount, and we're trying to work with organisations and individuals so they can take control of their own lives. So it's not just they kind of take a few pictures here and there. We're doing the best. We are doing work on the ground to let you know. But as I go back to the process of your portal, maybe we should send a questionnaire out, but it really did, I'd say, traumatise a lot of people because it meant this fund meant a lot to a lot of organisations. It's their bread and butter. But that to be taken away, it's going to be quite problematic for a lot of organisations if they don't receive the report, the support from the council, as you say that we will. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for coming, and Sally. And if I could just say, Moira, when the officers go and have their meetings, they could capture all this information. I think it's a really good point about the portal, because I know how frustrating it is when you put some information in, you lose it, and then you have to put it all back in again, and you lose it. So if we could, and then if we could just have a whole lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. It's quite, as I said, it's start this cold, it's been very disappointing for you, and we've had demonstratives that they will support you as you look at other things. And
I think the pudding.
Yes, the premium, as you say,
You know whether they have or not.
Yeah.
So I think that's saying that other organisations will be also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, if there aren't any other questions from the leadership team. Oh, Sue.
There was just one very minor suggested amendment on the second bullet point, if you're moving towards recommendations.
Sorry?
There's one minor suggested change, if you're moving towards recommendations, because it cites giving delegated authority to the Executive Director for Environment and Community.
Yes.
But as that role is changing from January, I was going to request that's amended to the appropriate senior officer.
Thank you. Recommendations. Otherwise, they'll be all happy to agree the recommendations. We go to the next page, please. Agenda item 6, which is the 42 revenue and capital payments and monitoring this forward.
Yeah, so this is a paper that I think we've probably been through before, and I know we've taken into scrutiny, and it reflects the position at the end of quarter two. There has been some improvement since quarter one in terms of our overall position. At that stage, we were reporting an overspend of 5.1 million. It's now come down to 2.68 million. But there are still major headwinds, and they're probably more persistent than maybe we would have anticipated 12 or 18 months ago. Most of all of those is housing and homelessness, which is driving £2.1 almost million cost pressure. That's probably a result more than anything else of increased costs for temporary accommodation, which is a problem that I think is affecting all London boroughs, and probably it's a national problem too. But we need to redouble our efforts to tackle that and be mindful as we start our budget setting for the 24-25 year. This is something that may be around for longer than we would like in terms of the financial pressure and also the obligation that we have to provide safe and secure housing, which we take seriously. Elsewhere, there have been improvements in terms of environmental communities. The industrial action that resulted in an overspending Q1 no longer applies, and therefore we're seeing a better financial performance in things like parking income. The other major contributor though to the overspend that we're seeing here is in treasury management. Although that performed well last year, this year it's reporting as an overspend, and so we'll have to hope that that improves. And I know that our team are meeting regularly with our treasury advisors to monitor the position and ensure that we get the best possible advice.
It's also actually with the issue with homelessness and rising rents, etc., that we see cost over. Well, the government's announcement put up the housing allowance. Will that have a material effect on this? What do you think? No.
I don't think it'll have a material effect on us. I think it impacts on private landlords more.
Okay.
But we're still working through that real agreements, and we'll have more on the assessment comes out at the end of the month.
Thank you. I want to comment from this from any of your portfolios.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate what Johnny has already mentioned about the housing pressure, and it is absolutely huge in the borough, huge across London, and there is an increase in numbers of people presenting as homelessness, and in fact, as Johnny said, the costs have gone up because so many private landlords are actually leaving the private rented sector.
Yeah.
And so we do rely on a lot of the council. We're having to put a lot of people in hotels, which is not a good outcome. People in hotels it also costs a lot. So we're very mindful of that and we're working really hard to address that. Unfortunately, it probably is going to be recurrent in the forecast for a long term.
And I believe that we've had some sort of idea of what will be coming in the financial settlement. But it touches on sort of adult social care, but there's nothing for children. And I noticed that, for children, it's the cost of placements, which is particularly worrying.
Yeah, so we've had there was a government briefing yesterday on the policy statement on political settlement, so just before Christmas. It doesn't look like it's going to be anything more for children.
Yeah. And Catherine, you're having increasing pressures on children.
We are with the cost of placements particularly, but also of course with the special educational needs costs as well, which actually in this paper you can see we have reduced them slightly, which is good, but there's still sort of 6 million plus that we're in deficit in that particular area.
And that 6 million plus in deficit is coming off our books, isn't it?
At the very least,
But it will. I think it's 2025, it comes back onto our books
The
again.
statutory override for Deputy Schools grant in the policy statement that was released yesterday, so that will end at the end of financial year 2025-26, at the end of March 2026. So that's when it will go back to the council.
So one more year, then we've looked. Or not, we've done that then, they haven't changed that date. No. Are there any other comments or questions? Mary?
Just the usual sort of concern about the housing revenue account, as you can imagine, the committee expressed. On a positive note, I think we noted the reduced costs within the school bubble budget, thanks to Kingston, and that was just a really positive outcome. That's not only saving us money, but also is presumably much better outcome for those children, or much better school life for those children. And I suppose the only other thing particularly to draw the leadership team's attention to is, once again, we've discussed section 106 and still funding, and the fact that we seem to never make quite as much progress, I suppose, as we helped. And lead member reassured us that we should see some more progress in the next sort of 6 months. But it's one of those things where maybe a bit more transparency or reporting or might be a good idea. But it's just generally to note that was a concern the committee had, that we didn't seem to be spending it in a way. When we're so short of money, we don't seem to be able to use it to get ourselves out of the hole.
No, it's a reasonable concern for the committee to have. We are in a more constrained financial position, and that is one of the levers available to us to invest in capital. Clearly, borrowing costs have gone up, and therefore we should be seeking to maximise our use of council capital and council reserves before we seek to borrow, because that reduces our overall costs.
And we were reassured by what Johnny had to say, but I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Okay. Samia.
Really 1.3 and 10.1. The two underspent quality. So 482,000 environment and communities, and for other social shares, 107,000. Is there a process when there's a note, rather than just offsetting against on the budget? Is there any process where that underspends, there's a bit of community involvement when there's an underspend? For community, certainly, that's the section that it pertains to, but specifically adult social care, we have calls from social workers who work really, really hard, face situations of crisis, and they come to us. Really, there should be sort of an emergency fund for the social worker who want to go the extra mile.
I think the thing is, this is a snapshot, because it's only the second quarter reporting, so it doesn't mean by the end of the year there'll be an underspend. It's just so.
That's an example. The process in terms of
It's a good point, Samira, and this came up, a very similar question at the Adult Social Care Select Committee last Thursday. With 107, it should balance out at the end of the year. So with winter especially coming, obviously there's more demand for service. So even though the budget is 107 below, that's actually going to average out to be basically cost neutral by the time we get to the end of the financial year. So it kind of all works out. So it's not like we have that extra money just in the tin forever. It just, averages out as we go. But
if let's say by some miracle by the end of the financial year, you've got the underspend, there's such a process that can be a bit more agile than look at the emergency needs that we have a reason during the year. And the 1.3 million that's set aside for the Brentford Legacy Fund, is that in the budget? Does it sit?
Yes, there's the Brentford Legacy Fund. It's always been there, because we said that we would put £50 million into it. And if there's any money left over, as it were, it's not really left over. It's made that people have decided not to spend so much this year, to keep it going for another year. And the bereavement survivors have decided that that's what they'd like to do. So rather than saying, we'll spend all this and then we'll have a cut-off here, they'll say, actually what we'd like to do is spend it slightly more slowly, so we have it over an extended period. But the budget itself has remained the same. Okay, can we please agree the recommendations in paragraph 2? Thank you. The next report, which is fees and charges.
So in a way, it's helpful to have the outturn as the proceeding paper because that forms the backdrop to this process in terms of setting our fees for the following year. It's also a companion piece to the draft budget that we presented last month. And what we're seeking to do here is regards consultation on a draft set of fees. Fees are a major but sometimes under considered sort of lever available to the council to look at financial challenges and also to ensure cost recovery in terms of statutory services. If you take fees and charges in the round, they're actually a larger lever than council tax in terms of sources of income available to the council's revenue budget. What this paper focuses on are the exceptions to our kind of standard approach from 24-25. The standard approach is that we will be increasing fees by 4%, which is in line with our best assumptions about inflation. We think that's a pragmatic and a proportionate approach that takes account of the financial headwinds that we've been talking about. But in some cases, we've had to increase these by a little bit more. And in other areas, we've sought to increase them by less or freeze them altogether to try and incentivize behaviours. So things like swimming pools and whether people can access them. We don't want to put up the fees for things like that because it's about people living healthier lifestyles, learning new skills. Whereas on the other hand, there are some areas where we're having to put up fees in order to generate that cost recovery that by statute we have to do. And I think across the fees, we try to look at this in a proportionate way, as I say. I know there are other councils that have increased parking fees, for example, by 1,800%. We don't think that's the right approach here in Kensington and Chelsea. We've sought to balance our commitments in terms of financial headwinds with value for money and the resident impact in terms of cost of living as well. And hopefully this is a good first step on that journey as we consult, and we'll be able to refine them further going into the budget in April.
Seems a very sensible approach. Are there any questions?
Well, no, only so what you're saying, the average increase across everything, the ups and downs, 4%.
Yeah.
Fine, that's which is inflation.
And in some
There's some of them I noticed were quite high.
Yeah, so
but the fee itself is quite small percentage. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I assume everyone's looked through their own portfolios and they've checked pictures of maybe egregious rises or. Yeah, we're all happy with this. So can we read the recommendations down? Paragraph 2. Great, thank you. 2, complaints. Report. Sorry, annual complaints report, which isn't really such happy reading.
Yeah, I can talk to this one as well. This is, as we say, a less happy reading. It's been to scrutiny though, and it's had some input from them, which I know we found valuable. I think what we should be saying tonight is that although there is modest improvement in the aggregate figure in terms of complaints, it's not what we'd like it to be. We're more ambitious than the figures in this sort of show us to be. We've made it commitment to be the best council, and how we respond to complaints has to be a big part of that. Customer service, customer experience, that's a major plank of becoming the best council and of the Grenfell legacy work that we've been doing. And so it's important to us that we take people's feedback, and some of the actions in this report are taken seriously and needed. We've got to be better as an authority. We have to set a challenge to officers here and hold you to account where complaints aren't being responded to in a timely way or we don't meet residents' expectations. And I think our message has to be that we want every interaction with residents, businesses, the voluntary sector to be positive. And that means being competent and making sure that people feel that when they make a complaint, they will have effective action that arises from that, and also that we care. because we need to be human, we need to present a compassionate face. Often we're dealing with very complex problems and the circumstances are challenging. So we should thank officers in those cases for dealing with those complaints because it's not easy. But at the same time, we want to be better. And becoming the best is a journey and one that we've all signed up to. So in this room and across the organisation, we need to start making that a reality.
I'm going to be sorry because housing needs to be
I was keeping my head down, but yeah, I mean, the housing needs is terribly reading, and I have asked, I think, directors in the room, I have asked for more information about this and our plans for how we are actually going to improve it. So I think the sheer volume is overwhelming to be honest.
Well-being, sorry,
The sheer volume of complaints and
well,
yeah, the sheer volume of requests for the housing needs is making them be a priority and then into complaints, because then the requests are not getting answered on time, so then that is to complaint. Or the requests are not getting answered satisfactorily and it's getting complaints. So but we need to do way better at it. I don't know if Dan wants to add anything to this.
very big of a story,
Yeah,
but it's rather noticeable.
Yeah, exactly. I think Councillor McVeigh is right that housing needs, particularly in Kensington and Chelsea, is a service where there's a kind of baked in level of dissatisfaction with the outcome that people get, and which unsurprisingly leads to a lot of complaints. If anything, though, that should raise the stakes on making sure that, you know, if the substantive answer that we give is no to what people are asking for in terms of housing, the level of customer service that we're offering to people, it wrapped around that, we should be holding ourselves to an even higher standard. It seems to me. In this case, we're falling very short of that standard in that particular team. But the particular frustration I've got is that housing management, also my directorate, is one of the best at dealing with complaints. It has similarly high volumes for all the reasons that you imagine, but the machine just works a lot better. So I've taken a much more direct personal role in the management of complaints now, and we're trying as much as possible to draw both the kind of people, but also the kind of culture and working practice that's been applied in housing management into housing needs. But it's clear that kind of volumes and general dissatisfaction is an issue here, but there are kind of cultural and practice issues that we really need to get a grip of, which I'm not happy with at the moment. So I totally accept the kind of challenge that's implicit in this conversation.
Also, if we say that culture change is part of our legacy from Grenfell, and then we were presented with a report like this, it's very dispiriting.
Absolutely right.
You think, well, whoa, it's 6.5 years, and complaints. Not only the complaints being up, but our ability to deal with them quickly, effectively, compassionately it's not. So
and housing management shows that that's possible. And I don't necessarily. The rise in the number of complaints might be a good sign, because it might show that people are more confident kind of holding us to account when they think we fall them short. But the fact that we're not able then to deal with them in a kind of timely way. And we probably get more cases referred to and then upheld by the ombudsman than we'd like, and so on. All of that shows that it's not working in the way that it should at the moment. I'm taking a much more direct and personal responsibility.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah,
And then Jeff.
thank you, Dan. No, my question on two points, but similar on that vein. So first question is, what is housing management doing that housing needs have not? And is there training, or is there cross-pollination between the teams, I guess, for other people to learn and vice versa? And secondly, I can understand when people disagree with the decision. I think that's a normal human reaction. But in the next kind of highest level of complaints, it's fair to address the issue. And that seems like a really kind of like complaint 101 process if we just kind of ignore it and give them a different response. So how can we correct that as well? As a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and I confess that I don't sit here with you kind of before you with all of the answers to those questions right at the moment. And that question of what our housing management doing right and how can we transpose that is partly about the kind of dedicated staff that they've got allocated to dealing with complaints, and the way that labour is divided between dedicated complaint staff and the responsible managers. And as I say, we're trying to now pull some of those dedicated complaint staff to working with housing needs in a more direct way. I think I think in terms of your second question about what people are complaining about and what that might be telling us about the service that people are getting and the way that perhaps the kind of first line of complaints are being dealt with. I think it's I don't fully understand it, but I think that might be where some of the cultural issues sit, and that getting staff. I mean, I guess the one thing I would say, and this is, I don't know if this in any sense, but as an excuse, but working in housing needs in the current housing environment is a pretty brutal and thankless job. And I think it can push people into a kind of defensive frame of mind, which is then not very conducive to good customer service. So one of the things we've got to do is to kind of recognise that and support the team in a way that kind of that helps them feel that they can be honest and direct about the realities of the situation, whilst also being compassionate and kind of human about it. You see what I mean? And that is a lot more easily said than done, I think, in the current environment. But that's the challenge we've got to set.
Sophie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, please. So this is an issue that's more, broadly across the organisation, not just housing. People communicate the issues they've had in many different ways, and sometimes it's quite complex for officers to unravel that. And it's one of the reasons why we suggest always that we recommend, and I think we'll do so more forcefully going forward, that the member of staff who's investigating the complaint starts with a telephone call with the resident, because that's when you pin down what exactly it is that they're concerned about and what resolution they're looking for. And that's when you can start to then address the totality of that and understand what's behind it. I think the second stage of that is making sure that the response isn't just transactional, but actually acknowledges the distress or upset or confusion or concern that might have caused for someone. It doesn't cost anything to put in some sentences that acknowledge that and apologise for the impact it's had to someone, and then make sure you're clear about the reasons why you come to the decision. So some of the training we're doing with the whole organisation is around that. But the key for me is a telephone call to the resident as soon as you receive that complaint.
And we know that housing managers do that, absolutely, stand that. I don't think that's
just on that, sorry, then particularly on that respect, is the same person seeing the process through? So like one other person rings the other person writes the response, and another person investigates. Is there like one person that sees the whole process through in a stage?
I think usually we expect one person to see the whole process through. I think with the volumes in housing management, they may get a bit of support from the team to actually follow that through. But our advice is that it should be the person best placed to understand the process and what's happened that writes the response. So kind of train people across the organisation. But then if it's escalated to stage 2, we always ask for someone else to look at it, because we don't want kind of a predisposed position coming to the process.
That's if someone
So we do ask it to be escalated to someone more senior, but someone still who's different and understands the process.
And is that what you're saying when you look at the next steps, which I commend her, and I think they look really good. Is that what you're saying? Also, to responses from non-statutory must be quality assured.
Yes,
that's what you're talking about there.
Yeah, so we want to start looking at making sure they've understood the totality of the complaints, spoken to someone, and they've responded in a way that's empathetic and reflects their own self-designers.
Jen?
Two things. So colleagues just earlier today have been dealing with a robot in trying to sort out my car insurance. And when you have 10 minutes of talking to nothing, it puts you in a frame of mind that even when you do get through to the person, what could have been a very straightforward transaction, suddenly it makes you frustrated that it should have been that much easier. So I'm very conscious that in my interactions with the council, they're normally excellent and I use lots of different services, but occasionally you can be on hold for a while and you sort of would rather they just say, you know what, we'll just call you back, or you're 20th in line, you're never going to get picked up, we'll deal with you later. So it's just sort of a plea that we don't put a robot in front of you to begin with, but actually that we give people that sort of recognizing that their time is valuable, that actually we will reach out back to the resident or to the service user as necessary. But my second point is on compliments, and they're sort of the inverse of complaints. It gets a small footnote, which is understandable in a complaints report, but they are where people have taken the time to write in. And actually, I'm not really aware of our mechanism for complimenting the council. But then that leads me to ask, do we track where these compliments are coming from? And are we sort of reflecting that maybe they're all from one service, or actually there's a broader data gathering that we have to recognise that if we have lots of complaints in one place but lots of compliments in another, is there something else that we can learn from sort of where that information is coming from?
So absolutely. One of the reasons we haven't, so the process for a compliment is we ask staff to receive a compliment to forward it onto the complaints team. One of the reasons we haven't given a detailed breakdown is because some services are not doing that. So it would be a kind of, the data would be inaccurate because it would be skewed by the virtue of one team send them all through and another team don't. So we want to do a bit of promotion of that this year with the complaints network that we've got right across the organisation, so we can start reporting on that. But we do report them through to DMTs, executive directive, on the quarterly report, and we do make sure that we set out what the learning was that came from those, so that we get the learning as well. But I think in subsequent reports, we'd like to see more consistency in reporting compliments, so that we can provide some more details on that in the form.
And Mary, you wanted to come in from the OSC, and can I also draw everyone's attention to the recommendation of the scrutiny committee, which I think is on page 271. So you probably read it, but I just want to draw your attention. Mary?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this report because we were very concerned. It's not really the number of complaints. Dan's perfectly right. Sometimes a high number of complaints is a symptom of an open organisation. What was really concerning is the 66% within our target versus 90%, and the really quite significant increase of complaints going to stage 2, which indicates that we're not doing well enough at resolving them at stage 1. And really, this is such a signature statistic about how we deal as a council, or such a signature measure that how we deal with complaints, that we felt very strongly that it needed to be addressed. I mean, I made the remark to Sophie in the meeting, like, it feels like you're putting all the right levers and nothing is happening. Because I know, there are all kinds of lessons in here that we've actually probably looked at before about how to do it in the organisation. It's as if the message is just not going through, which is why we made a recommendation about the leadership team really taking ownership of this and asking to see, for the time being, asking to see those statistics about how quickly we're responding to stuff within your department on a monthly basis, just till everything really starts to show an improvement. So that was our recommendation.
Personally, I think the recommendation is incredibly sensible because, as you say, to set our target at 90%, we think usually set targets that we can't even get anywhere near, and then to end up so low. I think I would really like every executive director and the portfolio holders to look at the information every month. Last word to.
So is this also the form of complaints process? Or is it all complaints? All complaints. So would that mean that if somebody, like you said, if somebody calls, you kind of speak to them on a level, etc. Do your staff capture that in their customer relationship model, or the system that you have to capture that conversation? Because I found personally myself that if I have had a conversation that's quite heated about something that an organisation isn't doing too greatly, and I've telephoned, that is not, the information isn't captured. So what I'm trying to say is, how do you capture that information? And also, I've had another question that has escaped me. But it's actually in regards to some of our users who've actually had the council on hold.
Yes. Yes, that's what Jen was saying.
Well, I'm just saying they've had the council on hold. They've called several times speaking to their operative, and then when they've gone to other organisations who are there to support them, and they've actually stated that they've called the council, when the organisation supporting them calls the person who's been dealing with them at the council, it's a different story. But some of our users have their conversations on hold, and that actually verifies their proof to themselves that they're actually making the calls and they're doing a lot of work. And what I also find is that a lot of residents or people who are experiencing difficulties, they do a lot of work. They go to several organisations, and a lot of the times they aren't able to get the results that they want. They're not moving forward. They've done a lot of work, and then the deadlines come, and to the person sitting in front of them at the council, they haven't done anything, but they've gone to all of the support agencies in the borough, and they haven't really gotten too far. So I just want to say that if you're talking about all complaints, I'm not sure whether this number represents the.
So if you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is formal complaints. We've done a lot of work to educate the organisation that if someone is making a complaint, even if it's on the phone or if it's in an email, they have it logged as a complaint. Because that's really, really important to making sure that we are looking at those and we see trends and issues. I'm sure there are still some that stick through, but we're working really hard to make sure if someone is making a complaint because something hasn't worked that should have done, it gets logged in our complaint system. And that's these. We are in the process of putting in some new technology that will allow us to capture more about the general routine conversations that we have with residents. So we expect that to start coming through and being implemented next year. And that will definitely improve our ability to track the conversations we have, make sure that we're looking to see messages and trends from them. I try and keep an eye on our wait times on our telephones every week. We do see them fluctuate a little bit based on, we might, if we're sending council tax letters out, we'll get a load of council tax calls and the wait times will go up. So we do try and juggle officers around the different lines as we see them, but sometimes we get peaks and we do see long wait times. But again, we're looking at telephone strategy to try and think about how we can implement some of those better ways of making sure residents feel that we can be in contact with them.
Thank you. Can I suggest? Oh, sorry. I was just quickly because I saw the point you're making, but I think was the point that you have to at some point say I am making a formal complaint for it to be captured.
No, you don't.
So you don't have to say
don't have
just
to.
even if you're
That's
saying
what we-
you generally have an angry
Yes.
conversation.
So we've educated staff to say we don't have to use the word complaint.
So they can say
So often
that's important.
we will get a referral from a member
Yeah.
and it will say they've tried they've written to council tax 3 weeks ago, not heard back. I will immediately log that as a formal complaint because it's a service failure.
Thank you. Okay. Very briefly.
Yeah, very quickly. You've done really well. It seems that there's a lot of complaints via housing management, and especially at stage 1 that are upheld or partly upheld. And I know you did this co-creation exercise about customer services, customer standards. And I know you work with Michael Ash from the Volunteer Centre. My only disappointment is that because housing management has the most complaints, it didn't make sense to me that the TCC wasn't involved and that didn't sit with housing management, because there's a lot that can be done and there's a lot from people actually in social housing and who are residents in Kent State Glass, and people that co-created those standards, because this is not going to really make a dent into.
Yeah,
I think that's really helpful.
thank you. Thanks for that.
I think probably what we need to do now is come back and focus on what the recommendations are. And then perhaps, so if you follow up some of the suggestions of the lady after the formal part of this meeting is over, if that's okay. So can we just look at the recommendations and can we make a comment, we will note in the comment of council's performance. We've really proposed action plan. Yeah, we're all happy with the action plan, which is in appendix 1.
Yeah.
And then I think we should agree the recommendation from the OSC that you look at complaints on a monthly basis. Frankly, at the moment, this isn't good. Is that agreed?
I agree.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think that brings us to the end of the formal part of this meeting. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for our guests who come to tell us their views this evening.